All right, so are you ready to go back in time a bit with us? We're going deep into the history and culture of the Four Counties region of Guangdong, China. And, uh, and it's a region that has had, honestly, a surprisingly big impact on the world,
Hmm,
especially when you think about the Chinese diaspora.
that's right.
Yeah,
It's a
so
story of migration, resilience, and cultural preservation.
exactly. And that's why this is for you, whether you're a history buff who's planning a trip to Guangdong
Mm-hmm.
or someone who's just curious about their family's roots.
Right.
Because we're going to uncover some stories here hidden within historical texts, architectural analyses, and even some linguistic deep dives.
Yeah, I've got a lot to unpack.
We do, we do.
Yeah.
But let's start with the basics. What exactly are the four counties?
So the four counties, or Siyi in Cantonese, referred to Taishan, Kaiping, Xinhui, and Enping. They're four counties that are located in the southwest of Guangdong province.
Okay, so geographically we've got it pinned down,
Mhm.
but what makes these four counties so special that they're grouped together?
Well, the term Siyi really emerged because of their shared history of emigration. Imagine the late 19th, early 20th centuries. Life in the Pearl River Delta was incredibly tough. Agriculture wasn't producing enough, taxes were high. To make matters worse, there were natural disasters, rebellions.
Right.
Many families felt they had no other option but to leave, to emigrate.
Yeah, that must have been such a difficult decision to make, to leave your home, everything you know, and
Absolutely.
travel across the world just with the hope of a better life.
It speaks to the resilience, determination of the Sea people.
It really does. And it's fascinating how the term four counties first appeared, not in China, but in overseas Chinese communities,
Right.
like the Chen Clan Association in Singapore, 1848, the Four Counties Association in San Francisco just a few years later,
Wow.
1851.
Yeah, it really highlights how shared experiences, even the experience of hardship and migration, can solidify a cultural identity that transcends geographical boundaries.
Huh. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned four counties, but I've also heard the term five counties or Wu Yi.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
You're right, there's also five counties. That's because the modern city of Jiangmen actually encompasses a fifth county, Hishan.
Okay.
So the name Five Counties reflects that.
So why do we still primarily hear about four counties then?
Because that historical label,
Right.
that shared identity forged through emigration, it remains really powerful, especially for diaspora communities.
Right.
Four counties holds a deeper cultural significance that goes beyond modern administrative borders.
It's amazing how a name can become so deeply intertwined with history and identity.
It is.
Speaking of unique identities, the Sea region also has its own distinct dialect, right?
Yes, and it's quite remarkable. The Sea dialect retains many features of ancient Chinese pronunciation, almost like a linguistic time capsule.
Wow.
For instance, it has a full set of nasal and stop codas and 9 tones,
9.
unlike Cantonese, which has 8.
So someone who's familiar with standard Cantonese might find Sea pretty different.
Definitely. It would sound like stepping back in time, linguistically speaking.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But the Siyi region's history isn't all about language preservation.
Wow.
It also witnessed some pretty intense conflicts, like the Hakapunti clan wars.
Hmm.
Millions of casualties. What were those wars really about?
Land was a factor, of course, but the conflict was deeply rooted in these cultural differences and a struggle for power and resources. The Hakka people were relative newcomers to the region,
Right.
having migrated from other parts of China, whereas the Punti people had been there for generations. And this created tension, this sense of us versus them.
Yeah, a reminder that even within a single region, you can have these complex dynamics and clashes
Exactly.
of culture and identity.
And the scale of the Hakapunti clan wars, lasting over a decade with millions of casualties,
Right.
really underscores the intensity of those clashes.
It's hard to even fathom the impact of such a prolonged and devastating conflict. So we have this unique region marked by hardship, a distinct dialect, and a history of conflict. And many people chose to leave, to emigrate and seek new opportunities. Where did they go, and how did they adapt to their new homes?
Well, many Sea people ended up traveling across the Pacific to the Americas.
Okay.
They were looking for work, often taking on difficult and dangerous jobs in mines, on plantations,
Right.
wherever they could find opportunities.
It's a testament to their resilience to leave everything behind and face such difficult circumstances in a foreign land.
Absolutely.
But they didn't face those challenges alone, did they?
No, they didn't. And that's where the story of those associations, like the Four Counties Associations, comes in.
Okay.
These organizations became vital support systems for new arrivals.
So they provided a sense of community and a way to preserve Siyi culture in a new environment.
Precisely. They offered assistance with navigating a new society, finding jobs, even maintaining cultural traditions. These associations acted as a bridge between the familiar and the unknown,
Right.
helping Siyi people adapt while holding on to their roots.
It's amazing how these organizations emerged to meet such a critical need.
Mm-hmm.
And their impact went beyond just practical support, didn't it? I mean, think about the role they played in preserving Siyi culture abroad. The food, the festivals, the traditions that are still alive today.
Absolutely. For example, Taishan cuisine, which was developed by Siyi immigrants, became incredibly popular in Chinese communities worldwide.
Wow.
It's a testament to the power of food to connect people to their heritage and to share that heritage with others.
And it's not just about cuisine. Those vibrant celebrations and festivals we see in Chinatowns around the world with their lion dances and colorful traditions, those are echoes of Siyi culture that have been passed down through generations. Now, before we move on, I have to ask about those incredible dialu, these fortified tower houses
Yeah.
that are so visually striking and unique to the Siyi region. What's their story?
The diode here.
Yeah.
They're a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of the Siyi people. These weren't just defensive structures.
Right.
They were also status symbols and symbols of family pride. Families would compete to build the most elaborate and impressive dialu, incorporating Western architectural elements like you wouldn't believe,
Really?
European castle features, Greek columns, even Islamic and Romanesque influences,
Wow.
all blended with traditional Chinese design.
That's an incredible fusion of architectural styles.
It truly is.
Yeah.
And the more elaborate the dialu, the wealthier and more influential the family. It was a way to showcase their success both in China and abroad.
So imagine this.
Yeah.
You've emigrated. You've found success in a new land.
Mm-hmm.
You want to contribute to your ancestral village to show your family's achievements.
Right.
Building a Grand Iolo was a way to do that even from afar.
Exactly. It created a powerful visual link between those who had left
Mm.
and those who remained in the Siyi region.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that cultural heritage isn't static. It evolves and adapts over time, influenced by both internal and external forces.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's a continuous process of exchange and adaptation.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah.
From the origins of the Four Counties label to the challenges of immigration and the fascinating ways Siyi culture has adapted and thrived in new environments.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who are fascinated by what they've heard so far and want to explore further,
Right.
perhaps even trace their own family roots back to the Siyi region,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any recommendations on where to start?
Absolutely. The website www.rootsofchina.com is a fantastic resource. They have extensive databases,
Okay.
historical records, even information on those clan associations that we discussed.
Right.
It's a great starting point for anyone wanting to delve deeper into this history,
Yeah.
explore their own personal connections to the Siyi story.
That's a great tip. I'll definitely check it out. But before we get lost in all that incredible historical data,
Right.
let's take a closer look at that unique Siyi dialect. 9 tones. That's a lot for most of us to wrap our heads around.
It is.
How did it end up so different from standard Cantonese?
Well, one factor is the relative geographical isolation of the Siyi region. It wasn't as exposed to the linguistic shifts that occurred in other parts of Guangdong. And remember those waves of migration we talked about?
Right.
As people left, they took their language with them,
Okay.
effectively preserving those older linguistic features in their new communities.
So it's like a snapshot of Cantonese from centuries ago,
Mhm.
frozen in time
Yeah,
by those who emigrated.
exactly.
That's fascinating.
It is, isn't it? It speaks to the power of migration to not only shape new cultures,
Right.
but also to preserve elements of the past in unexpected ways.
Okay, so we've talked about language migration, even those dramatic Hakapunti clan wars.
Mhm.
But let's shift our focus now to the experiences of Siyi immigrants when they arrived in new lands, like America.
Okay.
What kind of challenges did they face?
They faced incredible challenges, to say the least. Imagine arriving in a completely foreign country,
Right.
often with limited language skills,
Yeah.
facing prejudice and discrimination,
Right.
and having to compete for jobs in difficult conditions.
hmm
It wasn't an easy journey.
It sounds incredibly daunting,
Yeah,
but I imagine those four counties associations played a crucial role in helping them navigate those challenges.
absolutely. They were lifelines for many Siyi immigrants.
hmm
They provided a place to connect with people from their hometown, get help understanding the new society, even
Right.
find job opportunities.
Right.
They really fostered a sense of belonging and
Mm.
helped preserve cultural traditions in a foreign land.
It's a powerful example of how community and shared heritage can provide strength and resilience in the face of adversity.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a testament to the human spirit's ability to adapt,
Yeah.
overcome, and create something new while honoring the past.
Well said. And speaking of honoring the past,
Mm-hmm.
those dialogue are truly remarkable structures.
They are.
We touched on them earlier,
Yeah.
but I'd love to delve a bit deeper into their architectural significance.
I'm happy to. They're a visual representation of the cultural fusion that occurred in the Siyi region.
Yeah, like a castle and a home, all rolled into one.
Yes.
Can you give us some more details about those architectural influences?
Of course. You'll see elements of European castles with their watchtowers and defensive features,
Right.
blended with decorative balconies and Western-style details. And then there are the Greek columns, Islamic motifs, even hints of Romanesque architecture, all
Wow.
seamlessly integrated with traditional Chinese design principles.
They sound absolutely breathtaking.
And they're truly architectural masterpieces.
You mentioned earlier that they were also status symbols.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly. The more elaborate and grand the dialect, the wealthier and more influential the family that built it.
Okay.
It was a way to showcase their success, both in China and abroad.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine returning to your ancestral village, perhaps after years of hard work in a foreign land,
Right.
and being able to contribute to such magnificent structure. It was a way to honor your family, your heritage, and your own achievements.
So they were a way for immigrants to make a lasting impact on their home community, even from afar.
Precisely. And they stand today as powerful symbols of the connection between those who left and those who stayed.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds us that cultural heritage isn't static.
Mm.
It evolves, adapts, and takes on new meanings over time.
Exactly. It's a continuous flow of influences and adaptations.
Speaking of which, we've been talking a lot about the past.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the present and future of Siyi culture?
Right.
What efforts are being made to preserve this unique heritage for future generations?
There's a growing recognition of the importance of preserving this rich and multifaceted heritage. Both in China and within diaspora communities around the world, there are museums dedicated to Siyi history and culture.
Wow.
Cultural centers hosting events and language classes, and ongoing efforts to document and preserve those incredible dialects.
Right.
It's heartening to see so many people working to ensure that the stories,
Yeah.
traditions, and architectural wonders of the four counties are passed down for generations to come.
That's wonderful to hear.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reminder that cultural heritage is a living thing,
Yeah.
something that needs to be nurtured and celebrated.
Absolutely. And the Siyi story is a testament to the enduring power of culture to connect us to our past, shape our present, and inspire our future.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on a thought-provoking aspect of the Siyi story. We've talked about the Siyi impact on places like the U.S., Canada, Australia. But what about the reverse? How did those who returned to the Siyi region, perhaps generations later, change it? What new ideas and perspectives did they bring back?
That's a fascinating question, and it highlights the fact that cultural exchange is a two-way street.
It's a reminder that migration isn't just a one-way journey. It creates these complex webs of connection and exchange that can influence both the sending and receiving societies.
Exactly, and the Siyi story is a perfect example of that dynamic.
But we'll have to delve into those questions in more detail in our next segment.
Yeah.
But for now, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue our exploration of the four counties and their enduring legacy.
It's fascinating to consider how those return journeys shaped both the individuals and the Siyi region itself.
It really is. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to circle back to those who stay behind in China. We talked about the hardship and conflict that fueled emigration. What was life like for those who remained in the Siyi region during those turbulent times?
Life was undoubtedly challenging.
Yeah,
The Hakapunti clan wars created this widespread instability and upheaval.
right.
Imagine entire villages being fortified, families living in fear of attacks,
Right.
and the constant threat of violence hanging over everyday life.
It paints a stark picture of the difficulties they faced.
Hmm.
And yet, amidst all that turmoil, they still managed to maintain their cultural traditions
Yeah.
and build those incredible dialects.
That's right. Those towers weren't just defensive structures.
Right.
They were expressions of resilience,
Mhm.
symbols of hope and community in the face of adversity. And they were also, as we mentioned earlier, a way for families to showcase their success and connect with their relatives who had emigrated overseas.
So even during those difficult times, there was this sense of connection, this
Mm.
desire to maintain ties with family and heritage, both within the Siyi region and across the oceans.
Exactly. And speaking of connections, let's delve a bit deeper into the role of those clan associations, both in China and abroad.
Okay.
We've touched on their importance in providing support and preserving traditions,
Right.
but they also played a significant role in shaping Siyi identity.
Could you elaborate on that? How
Yeah.
did they specifically shape Siyi identity?
Well, think about it this way. When people emigrate, they often cling to their cultural identity even more tightly
Mm-mm.
as a way to maintain a sense of belonging and connection to their roots.
Right.
And the clan associations provided a framework for doing just that. They organized cultural events, celebrated traditional festivals, and even offered language classes.
So they weren't just social clubs.
Right.
They were actively involved in passing down Siyi language, customs, and values to new generations.
Precisely. They became the keepers of Siyi heritage, ensuring its continuity in new and often challenging environments.
And it's remarkable how they managed to adapt those traditions to new contexts.
Mm-hmm.
Take Taishan cuisine, for example.
Right.
It evolved from the culinary traditions of the Siyi region, but it also incorporated influences from the places where Siyi people settled,
Mm-hmm.
creating something unique and distinct.
You're right. It's a perfect example of how cultural heritage isn't static. It's a dynamic process of adaptation and reinvention.
And it's not just about food. Those vibrant celebrations and festivals we see in Chinatowns around the world with their lion dances and colorful traditions,
Mm-hmm.
those are echoes of Siyi culture that have been passed down through generations and reinterpreted in new ways.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a testament to the adaptability and creativity of the Sea people.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just preserve their heritage, they made it relevant to their new lives and shared it with the world.
Now, we've talked extensively about the challenges and triumphs of the Siyi people, but I'd like to shift gears for a moment and explore the region itself.
Mm-hmm.
What was the landscape like? What were the unique geographical features that shaped life in the four counties?
The Sea region is situated in this beautiful and diverse landscape.
Okay.
Imagine rolling hills, fertile rice paddies, and winding rivers that connect the villages and towns.
Right.
And then there's the coastline with its fishing villages and bustling ports that served as gateways to the world.
It sounds idyllic,
Mm,
but I imagine that beauty also came with its share of challenges.
of course.
We talked about the natural disasters that contributed to the wave of emigration.
That's right. The region was prone to typhoons, floods, and droughts, which could devastate crops and disrupt livelihoods.
Right.
These natural disasters just added to the hardships faced by the Sea people,
Right.
pushing many to seek a more stable and secure future elsewhere.
It's a reminder that the story of the four counties is not just about human resilience, but also about the power of nature to shape destinies.
Mm.
And speaking of destinies, let's talk about those who did emigrate. We know they faced incredible challenges, but how did they ultimately fare in their new homes?
Well, their experiences were as diverse as the individuals themselves.
Right.
Some struggled to make ends meet,
Mm-hmm.
facing discrimination and hardship.
Right.
Others thrived, building successful businesses and contributing to their new communities. But one common thread that emerges is the importance of family and community support.
Right.
Those who had strong family networks and connections to the clan associations often found it easier to adapt and build new lives.
So those networks of support, both formal and informal, played a crucial role in helping Siyi people navigate the challenges of migration
Absolutely.
and create a sense of belonging in their new homes.
And those networks extended across generations as children of immigrants learned about their heritage, preserved traditions, and in some cases, even returned to the Siyi region to reconnect with their roots.
It speaks to the enduring power of heritage and the desire to understand where we come from. And for those who are interested in exploring their own family connections to the Siyi region, we highly recommend visiting www.rootsofchina.com.
Yes.
It's a treasure trove of information for anyone wanting to trace their ancestry and uncover the stories hidden within their family tree.
It's a fantastic resource. And even if you don't have personal ties to the region, it's a fascinating window into a chapter of Chinese history that has had a profound impact on the world.
Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question. We've talked about the sea impact on the world, but how did the world impact the sea region? Think about the flow of ideas, technologies, and cultural influences that traveled back and forth across the oceans. How did those interactions shape life in the four counties?
It's something to ponder as we move into the final part of our exploration.
Yeah, it really highlights that back and forth. You know how the sea region influenced the world and how the world in turn influenced the sea region?
It does.
Exactly. So as we delve into this final part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on those influences.
Okay.
How did the experiences of sea immigrants abroad shape their ancestral homeland?
Well, one of the most tangible impacts was economic. Many immigrants sent money back to their families in the sea region,
Right.
which helped to improve living standards and fuel local economies.
So it wasn't just about individuals finding success abroad.
Yeah.
It was about those individuals using their success to uplift their communities back home.
Precisely. And those remittances weren't just about financial support. They were often accompanied by new ideas and perspectives.
Right.
Immigrants who'd been exposed to different ways of life, different technologies, different forms of government, brought those influences back with them,
Right.
sparking social and cultural change.
So it was almost like a cultural feedback loop. Those who left helped to shape the world they encountered, and in turn, the world they encountered helped to reshape their ancestral homeland.
That's a great way to put it. And it's reflected in everything from architectural styles to educational reforms to the adoption of new agricultural techniques.
You mentioned architectural styles. I'm curious to hear more about that.
Okay.
Did the dialect, for example, reflect any of those global influences?
Absolutely. Remember how we talked about those European castle features?
Right.
Greek columns, other Western architectural elements incorporated into the dialect? Those were often inspired by the experiences of immigrants who had traveled to those places and brought back ideas and aesthetic preferences.
So even those seemingly traditional structures were actually products of cultural exchange and globalization.
Exactly. And that fusion of styles wasn't limited to architecture.
Right.
It extended to fashion, music, even cuisine.
So the CE region wasn't just a place that preserved its own traditions. It was also a place that embraced new influences and integrated them into its cultural tapestry.
Precisely. And that openness to new ideas contributed to the dynamism and resilience of the Sea people.
Now, we focused a lot on the positive impacts of emigration and cultural exchange. But were there any negative consequences?
Sure.
Did the influx of new ideas and ways of life create any tensions or challenges?
There were certainly challenges. Some people in the Sea region felt that traditional values and ways of life were being eroded by foreign influences. There were debates about the role of Western education, the adoption of new technologies, the balance between preserving tradition and embracing modernity.
So it wasn't always a smooth or harmonious process. There were different perspectives and sometimes even clashes over how to navigate those cultural shifts.
That's right. But I think those debates were a sign of a healthy society, one that was grappling with complex issues and trying to find its own path forward.
And ultimately, that process of adaptation and evolution is what has allowed sea culture to not just survive, but to thrive in a rapidly changing world.
I couldn't agree more. It's a testament to the ingenuity and adaptability of the Sea people.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the history and culture of the four counties, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the importance of understanding our own family histories and connections to this remarkable story. For anyone who's been inspired to explore their own roots and uncover those hidden connections, we highly recommend visiting www.rootsofchina.com.
Yeah, that's a great resource.
It's an incredible resource for tracing your ancestry and learning more about the sea experience.
It's a treasure trove of information and a great starting point for anyone wanting to delve deeper into this fascinating chapter of Chinese history.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our journey through time. We've explored the origins of the four counties label, the hardships and triumphs of emigration, the resilience of those who stayed behind, and the incredible cultural fusion that has emerged from this remarkable story. We've covered a lot of ground, but I hope we've also sparked a desire to learn more, to uncover those hidden connections, and to appreciate the enduring legacy of the four counties. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those stories alive. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.